Hey all, today we're going to be talking about the 4 body image avatars. And I've been talking quite a bit lately about the root causes of body image issues, and the reason for this is I am attempting to make it easier to find clarity around where your body image issues have come from, and therefore what you're going to need to heal and move towards body neutrality to get away from them. So this is really important because body image issues themselves don't tell us a whole lot about what we need to heal. Just like how your friend might have body image issues and you might have body image issues, and what helps her feel better doesn't make you feel any better, and vice versa. This is why a lot of the advice around body image and body positivity is kind of useless, is because people are coming from completely different root causes and then sharing advice with someone being like, do what I did, it worked great, and the person receiving the advice is like, that's not helpful to me at all. And the reason is because body image issues are not a one size fits all. There's different root causes, and my hope is by coming up with the 4 body image avatars, we can talk about what those root causes are, what the big patterns of how those body image issues manifest based on the root cause, what those are, and what the work looks like to heal and move towards body neutrality once you've recognized where they come from. So, as a way of sort of a shorthand to talk about these patterns, I've come up with 4 body image avatars. But please understand, I am painting in super broad strokes, and the topic of body image is way too complex to actually be boiled down into just 4 categories. There's a ton of nuance to this conversation, so we will be discussing these 4 avatars that I've come up with, but nobody's going to just be one of them. Most people will resonate pretty strongly with 1 or 2. Somebody might resonate with all 4. You can absolutely be different avatars in different stages of your life, or in different aspects, or in different places. So it's a really nuanced conversation. Please forgive me for being overly general as we kind of look at these patterns and recognize that this is a starting point. This is just a jumping off point to the conversation of what's going on with you, what kind of healing you need when it comes to your body image issues. And if you happen to see yourself in 1 or more of these avatars, awesome. If not, there may be more to the conversation that would make it helpful for you to be able to see it. For example, layers of privilege and oppression totally change the experience of being in any of these avatars. So for example, a person in a very thin body with a lot of trauma might experience a totally different manifestation of one of these avatars than somebody who lives in a large body with no trauma. Well, not that nobody has no trauma, but you see my point. It changes the effect, changes the manifestation of what these avatars look like. So please just recognize that we're painting in broad strokes. We're looking at patterns. It's a jumping off point. And if you don't recognize yourself in any of them, please feel free to hit me up and we can chat about it. It's possible that you are somewhere in between, that you are all of the above, or maybe you're in a totally different place, and that's also all valid. So the first body image avatar that we're going to talk about today is what I call the high achiever. Now it should be noted that all of the body image avatars are attempting the same kind of plan, as it were, which is basically to get their needs, their unmet emotional needs met by looking a certain way, whatever that is. And for the high achiever, the unmet emotional needs that they are attempting to get met by looking a certain way come down to respect, validation, and social status. So when we look at the high achiever, we tend to be looking at somebody who is probably going to be focused on and valuing hard work, discipline, willpower, and self-control, whether or not it ever applied to their bodies. So we're looking at somebody who maybe came from really tough parents, or a family with high standards, or a cultural or familial or community background of really, really high expectations and standards. Somebody who works really hard or values really hard work and discipline. Somebody who, generally speaking, is perfectionistic and afraid of failure is often going to be a high achiever. And also just terror of laziness. This is a big, big function for high achievers, is they're always attempting to prove to the world that they are not lazy, because as we know, we live in a culture that really, really comes down hard on perceived laziness and has a lot of respect and celebration for people who are perceived as high self-control, high discipline, high willpower, hard work, etc. So the person who falls into the high achiever category is generally going to be somebody who is obsessive about control. So maybe they control their food intake, maybe they control their exercise routine is really rigid, maybe they're controlling they're obsessed about body checking or managing their weight or that kind of thing. And all of it is about getting respect and validation and social status in this particular world that we live in, which says that all of those things are earned by hard work, discipline, self-control, and especially in the world of fitness and diet. So if you can restrict your food and work really hard at the gym, you're going to have the body of someone who is worthy of respect. And that is essentially what the high achievers' body image issues come down to, is seeking that kind of validation and respect. Now, whether or not they succeed at it, meaning do they live in a privileged body that looks, thin and lean and fit and small, or do they live in a body that maybe is bigger and softer or disabled or in another way doesn't fit into the image of what we think of as worthy of respect in this particular kind of bias, that's going to change their entire experience of being in this category. So there's a lot of nuance here as always, but just recognize that the high achiever is always trying to earn a feeling of respect, high social status, and validation through body control or looking a certain way. So depending on what's coming up for the individual person, this can look very different, but the work that the high achiever tends to have to do when we're looking at overcoming body image issues and moving towards body neutrality include poking a lot of holes in the idea that a certain kind of body is worthy of more respect. So really challenging the paradigm around diet culture, wellness, nutrition, self-care, all that stuff, challenging the idea that a person who is lazy lives in a bigger body, for example. A person who is self-controlled and worthy of respect lives in a smaller body. These are things that have to be challenged and dismantled and unpacked from a cognitive place, like really just changing the way you see, perceive, and believe the world is and people are, is a hugely important part of overcoming body image issues for the high achiever. There's also a lot of building up parts of yourself that you're proud of, that you believe are worthy of respect, and that you demand people respect. Because a lot of the high achiever is searching for a validation that is so easily lost. Like every day they have to do these things. They have to be perfect. They have to never fail. They can't have flaws. A lot of the pressure they put on themselves is based on the fact that they're constantly seeking more validation. And if it comes through body control, you can never give that up if what you're really needing is constant validation. So you have to find a new way of giving yourself a source of self-worth, pride, something that makes you feel impressive and good and proud of yourself. Like all of that stuff will start to offset and make it less important what other people think and where you get that validation and what you're earning as far as respect in that way, because you respect yourself. Another bit of the work that they have to do is to shift their loyalty away from parents or culture that basically say you are more worthy if you do this and look a certain way, you are less worthy if you do that and look a certain way. You have to shift loyalty. There really is a loyalty that we hold a lot of times to somebody else's system of belief. And so the high achiever tends to have to reclaim agency and shift their loyalty away from somebody else's system and towards a new system that they choose for themselves, in which they are already worthy of respect. Which brings up boundaries and the fact that they have to be more discerning with the people they spend time with, because a lot of times the high achiever has people in their life who disrespect them if they don't earn their respect, which is really messed up and has to shift. You have to be willing to have boundaries and say, I will only be respected by the people I choose to be with. I refuse to be disrespected. And if you disrespect me, I'm not going to make space for you in my life. And lastly, just choosing a more meaningful way of getting, basically like surrounding yourself with people who affirm and validate that you are worthy of respect and validation and status for reasons that have nothing to do with how you look. And learning to tolerate the feelings of discomfort that brings up if you have disappointed somebody or if they expected something more of you. These are all ways that the high achiever might have to do some work, learn some skills, do some fear facing in order to overcome their body image issues. The second body image avatar we're going to talk about today is the SelfObjectifier. So the SelfObjectifier's core driving need to be met by looking a certain way, or at least that's what they're hoping, comes down to having a certain kind of access to love, partnership, sex, and intimacy. So this category is extremely gendered. As you can imagine, the SelfObjectifier tends to be a woman or a femme who has been taught that her whole job on earth is just to be attractive to men in order to make those men choose her and give her what she wants and meet her needs. So that is the general belief system of somebody who is a self-objectifier. They are attempting to change their bodies or fix their bodies or conform their bodies to cultural ideals of beauty and body norms in order to get somebody to choose them and give them everything they want in terms of partnership, intimacy, sex, and love. A lot of these women who come to me will report feeling like too much, feeling like they're too emotional, feeling like they have too much need, they're too needy, they have too many desires, they have too many opinions and thoughts, just too much everything. They're too intense, they overwhelm people. They're worried that if anybody ever saw their full self, that it would be a complete turnoff and it would risk for them having their needs for partnership and love and intimacy and sex met. Part of the reason for this is because we've been taught that the ideal woman is vapid and empty. She doesn't need anything. She doesn't want anything. She's just hot, and that's it. And so, of course, being a whole human person in a woman's body is going to feel like you're doing something wrong. And the self-objectifier feels that deeply and intensely and takes it out on their body by trying to either make up for being too much and therefore have to look perfect in order for anybody to choose them, or just as a way of trying to kind of change and fix and offset and sort of lure somebody into choosing them. It is this also kind of transactional thing to say, if I look hot enough for you, you'll let me have my feelings. If I perform attractiveness enough for you, you'll make space for me to have all of my desires and needs. So there is that kind of hope there that there'll be a level of intimacy and partnership and love that will be met finally if only they look good enough that their partner is inspired to give it to them or to make space for them. The self-objectifier tends to be focused on beauty, being sexy, fitting cultural beauty ideals, and always about being attractive. So we just talked about how the high achiever might not really worry about being sexy or beautiful. They're really focused on looking controlled, and a lot of times that's just about weight. The self-objectifier is very worried about being beautiful or sexy, about being attractive and desirable, often to men, sometimes to all men, sometimes to specific men, but that is very much a part of the narrative. They tend to blame their appearance for either making it impossible for them to get their needs in this way met, or for not inspiring people to give them what they want. So maybe they have a partner, but it's not meeting their needs for intimacy. They blame their bodies. They say, if only I looked better, then I would feel more secure and I would get the intimacy and connection that I'm really seeking in this way. I would have the kind of depth of eye contact and sexy goodness with my partner. I would finally get that met. Deep conversations would happen if I looked better. And so there's often that direction. Also, if somebody's single, they might blame their bodies and really, really focus on their bodies as the one means they think will earn them a partner. So no matter whether you're partnered or single or whatever the situation is, the self-objectifier is always going to have their body image issues come down to an unmet need and desire for more intimacy, closeness with a partner, or partnership in general, a certain kind of sex or a certain depth of intimacy during sex. All of that stuff is going to be the root cause of why they feel obsessed with their bodies, obsessed with their appearance, hateful and resentful of any flaws or imperfections that they perceive, etc. So the work that the self-objectifier is most likely going to have to do in order to overcome their body image issues and move towards body neutrality really comes down to challenging gender norms, challenging beauty ideals, challenging the role of objectification in partnership and intimacy, and the idea that objectification equals love, which is not true. They're going to have to get a lot of clarity on what it is that they actually want, and then build up the skills of going and getting that met directly. So for example, if they discover what I want is a partnership that is rich in deep, intimate conversation and super slow, sensual sex. Maybe they identify that for themselves, and now they have to learn to build the skills to go get that met. Either be more discerning in who they partner with, learn to date in a way that allows them to find out who is compatible with them in this way, or just ask for what they want of their current partner and drive that partnership in the direction they want to go. There's a lot of vulnerability that this person often has to build up the skill and tolerance for, because it is incredibly vulnerable to express your needs and urges in this way. To express, hey, I need something more. I have these feelings. I want this thing, is very, very vulnerable. So that's a big part of the work that the self-objectifier often has to do. Also, discernment and boundaries around being capable, finding partners who are capable of going there with them. So being able to be at a depth of intimacy that you crave with a partner means you have to know how to go there. You also have to be discerning in who you choose to go there with, because they also have to be capable of going there. So tolerance of uncomfortable feelings around vulnerability and rejection, and learning to really embody and move towards the things you want more directly are all going to help the self-objectifier move towards body neutrality. All right, the third body image avatar that we're going to talk about today I call the runner. And the runner's core emotional needs that they are attempting to meet by looking a certain way comes down to a feeling of safety, feeling of security, and or self-protection. So the runner's body image issues tends to center around an avoidance of feeling their feelings, because feeling their feelings is totally, it's unsafe. It feels dangerous to feel their feelings and to be really embodied. Body image issues can honestly just be an amazing distraction from whatever it is you're feeling or whatever your gut is telling you. So in some ways it just offers you like a diversion that you can obsess over for the rest of your life. Very convenient. Thank you, body image issues. It can also like literally numb and repress your experience of being in your body, your feelings. For example, dieting. The entire point of dieting is to ignore your bodily signals, repress them down, and overcome them by, not eating when you want to eat. So, you have hunger, you press that down, you ignore it, you try to do everything you can to separate yourself from it and to numb that feeling. So in some ways, the behaviors of body image stuff that comes up, like over-exercising, restricting and dieting and controlling food, obsessing over things like, skincare or makeup or other beauty routine stuff, all of that can serve to either distract you from your feelings so you just have something else to think about, or literally numbing and repressing those feelings. This is really, really important to understand, because if you have been taught or learned or experienced trauma so that feeling your feelings feels incredibly threatening and dangerous, you need something to help you escape. Often having experienced trauma just means you can't feel your feelings. It's a complete dissociative experience where you just don't know what you're feeling. And so again, in lieu of being able to feel your body image issues can pop up because you suddenly become really focused on looking a certain way because you cannot really feel yourself from the inside. You're focused on what you look like from the outside. So the runner it can be a lot of different places that kind of get you into it, but they tend to be seeking a feeling of safety, a feeling of security, or a feeling of being protected through looking a certain way, controlling their body, etc. The runner is also very likely to feel deeply betrayed by their bodies. So they will be the ones who are most likely to tell me, I just feel like my body's the enemy. I can't believe it would do this to me. Maybe the thing that they're responding to is like weight gain. Maybe they gained weight in college or during a certain phase of life, and they'll say, I just don't know why it's doing this to me. It's very me versus my body. And part of the reason is because if you are dissociated, if you cannot feel your body, there is a very often big feeling of, my body is a completely separate entity to me. It's got a mind of its own. It's trying to ruin my life. And then there's me over here trying to stay safe, trying to lose weight, trying to fit all of these norms and ideals and follow all of these rules. And my body is just wild and out of control, and it wants to ruin everything. So that is something that the runner will often report to me. And that all of the stuff that there is a lot of avoidance, a lot of getting out, getting away from feelings of fear and anxiety, because that is self-protective. And if you just think about body image issues, they crop up for a reason, kind of like addictions or eating disorders. They don't happen for no reason. They're adaptive at a certain point, or at least they're intended to be useful to you. So if we think about the runner, a lot of times we're looking at body image issues that cropped up to protect us at a time we needed protection. So as you can imagine, there is a lot of times these habits just kind of they just roll and they become like the default way of living in the world. And they're no longer adaptive and they're no longer really helping us, but they started as a way of protecting us from feeling our feelings when those feelings felt completely unsafe, way too big, way too scary. Maybe at a time when we were young in a family, we didn't have any agency, we couldn't protect ourselves any other way. Maybe we were in a situation that was bad and we needed to protect ourselves by not feeling all of that stuff. And so we just found ways to cope. And body image issues serve to help us cope in a really, really amazing way. Unfortunately, down the line, for healing and overcoming them and moving towards body neutrality, you do have to learn how to feel your body again, how to be embodied again. And learning how to feel safe in your skin is going to be a really big part of the healing process. So the work that the body image avatar of the runner is going to have to do a lot of times in order to heal and overcome their body image issues is about reconnecting. Reconnecting internally, learning to feel the sensations in their body, feel their emotions in their body, learn to reconnect with their intuition, and to restore a feeling of tolerating all of that, knowing that you're safe to feel all of that, instead of needing to run away from it because it's too big, too scary, too bad, too threatening. So a lot of this is about finding safety in the body in a new way that allows them to stop needing a lot of the habits of body image that they have been relying on to sort of give themselves a feeling of being protected or being secure or being safe. They also have to learn to blame the system or the people who have caused them harm instead of blaming themselves for that harm. So when we look at trauma especially, there is a really human urge to blame ourselves for what happened to us when something bad happened to us, instead of blaming the people who did it, especially if those are people that we loved, and also to blame ourselves instead of blaming the society and the systems of oppression that led to us being harmed. So there's a reclaiming of basically taking all of that blame and shame and anger and resentment that you've been aiming towards your body and aiming it outward where it belongs, to the people who hurt you and the systems of oppression that led to you being harmed, instead of blaming yourself, instead of blaming your body. And that will help the runner, again, find a feeling of safety in the world, in their body, that they have been craving so badly and hoping to have met by looking a certain way. The last body image avatar we're going to talk about today I called the outsider. Now, the outsider's body image issues come down to an attempt to get their needs for belonging and connection and acceptance all met by looking a certain way. Now, I will say connection here, it can be very similar to the person, the self-objectifier, who's trying to get a certain amount of connection met in that kind of romantic and sexual space. But I am referring more to connection in terms of like community, friendship, acquaintances, and that kind of connection space. And they do feel very different. There can totally be crossover, but they tend to feel very different because the outsider's core feeling is that they do not belong, or that they're different and that they don't belong here, wherever here is for them. And so they're always attempting to use their body to look a certain way to get to a certain point where they will either be granted access to belonging, maybe to specific social circles or communities or friendships, or to finally offer themselves a feeling of belonging, because maybe they already are pretty well connected, like a person in a really privileged body, somebody who's very thin, very conventionally attractive. That person might have a lot of friends, be well connected in social circles, and still feel like an outsider. So it doesn't matter what's actually going on in their life, they will feel like they don't belong. And so a lot of times that comes down to feeling like they are only valued for how they look, and nobody really sees who they actually are. So the outsider tends to really struggle with authenticity. There is a lot of people pleasing that tends to go along with this. There is a lot of avoidance of conflict. I've had people who I would consider in this category tell me that their biggest fear is sort of rocking the boat. Like all they want is just to be considered normal and fit in. And that comes from a feeling that their only way to belong anywhere is that they have to squish out who they are in order to, fit certain, conform to certain ideals, and then they'll be granted belonging. Unfortunately, that's not how belonging works. So even if you did that successfully, you still wouldn't probably not feel like you belong. So the people who fall into this category often tell me what they imagine they would get if they actually fit in or belonged is ease. These tend to be people who are deeply lonely. They really struggle to feel seen deeply, to feel known deeply, to feel vulnerable with others. They tell me often that they are slow to trust, that they are hard to warm up to people or hard to get to know, that tends to lead to a feeling of like nobody even knows me, which can be really, really heavy and lead to a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of heaviness that gets just projected onto their bodies. They blame their bodies. They say, if only I looked different, then it wouldn't feel this heavy, it wouldn't feel this hard. I would just belong and I would feel welcome and seen and known. And so that kind of connection, that kind of sense of belonging is what they're seeking by trying to control their bodies, by trying to change their bodies, or trying to maintain a certain kind of aesthetic. So the work that the outsider has to do in order to overcome their body image issues, to take the pressure off their bodies to look a certain way, to dial down the volume on how much power their appearance has over their feeling in the world, their mood, their sense of self, is to learn to be vulnerable, learn to be authentic. If they don't know who they are, learn to be who they are, and then learn to express who they are in the world. That way, they're actually able to form authentic connections with other people that give them a feeling of belonging that lands with them. Because if you fit yourself to conventional norms and you conform yourself and you make yourself what other people want, even if they approve of you and they validate you and they welcome you and they say, we love you here, you still aren't going to feel like you belong because you aren't really there. So when we're talking about the outsider, we're talking about somebody who needs to learn how to find themselves and then express that in the world, which means learning to be super vulnerable, learning to communicate differently a lot of times, learning to hold space and tolerate rejection, learning to basically allow themselves to not be everybody's cup of tea, to let themselves be a little divisive, to be rejected, to not be for everyone, because again, the outsider tends to be a super people-pleasing type where they're trying to give everybody what they want and expect from them. And when they let themselves just be who they are and express that in the world, it can be terrifying, but it's going to give them the richness of connection and belonging that they're seeking. And that will take all the pressure off to look perfect because they will have their needs for belonging met. There's also a lot of self-acceptance required here, especially of dark material, especially of the stuff that they feel is unlovable about themselves. And this is true for all the avatars in a way, but it tends to be the stuff that makes people feel like an outsider is their dark material. It's the aspects of themselves that they feel are completely unacceptable, that they have been hiding all this time, that have to be accepted, welcomed, integrated into who they are, owned so that it doesn't have so much shame and darkness attached to it, and then brought into the world. Because nothing about you is actually makes you unlovable and unacceptable. And trying to reject those parts of yourself that you perceive that way is going to lead to feeling like an outsider, lead to needing to perform and be perfect and make everybody like you by doing what they want, instead of offering you the ability to really be present with people and connect and accept the belonging that is offered to you in those spaces. That is it. So if you resonate with one or two of these avatars, great. That might give you some clarity and direction. Hopefully it gives you a little bit of conceptually you can kind of understand maybe what's going on, why you have the body image issues that you have, and then also what kind of work you might need to be doing to move forwards towards body neutrality and take the pressure off your appearance to make you feel how you want to feel in the world. If you resonate with all of them, that is totally possible. It's possible that you just have a lot of complex stuff going on and that you are just going to have a slower, longer journey towards body neutrality because you have more layers that have to be peeled back. If you resonate with none of them, that's also okay. Like I said, hit me up. I'm happy to chat about this stuff. Some people might be outside the 4 avatars. Or maybe it's just difficult to see where you fit into this because we don't have time today to go into a longer, more nuanced conversation about how trauma plays in, how privilege and oppression play in, how different lived experiences play in. I'm happy to talk about all of that stuff. My hope is that this gives a little bit of clarity and insight. If you have any questions, please let me know and we can talk about this further. And thank you for watching.